What's up, y'all? It's your boy. And this is more so a discussion video on the state of Yu-Gi-Oh right now. So, I was binge watching Joshua Schmidt. For those of you who don't know, probably do know if you're watching my video. Probably seen Joshua Schmidt before me, obviously. But for the rare, like, occasion that people don't know, Joshua Schmidt is he's a champion. He's a Yu-Gi-Oh champion, right? And what's and why I'm bringing him up is because if you want to get better at the game, then you probably want to watch something who's a pro at it, who's won multiple times, you know? So I watch him, I watch Jesse Cotton, and when Pack posts videos, Team Samurai, like I watch all of the pros, and then I even watch some non-pro people because they're really good. They just have never, like, taken or gone above and beyond. But the reason I'm bringing this up, the topic of discussion today, if you haven't seen the title of the video, which I'm sure I'm gonna make, or I'm gonna put as the title. Oh, that's pretty good that I got Draco Tail Mana. Anyway, so my problem. So the first video, the two videos that coerced me into making this video was the first video that I watched of Joshua's was um what was the first video? I'm like losing my mind here. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter the order, but the reason that the two videos that are even like topic of discussion, the first video I want to talk about is mid-range a problem. That's one of his videos that came out a few days ago, and it's talking about the problem with decks that set up and do all of this just to set up a unbreakable board. And you know, like the decks that I'm talking about, like uh Fiend Smith, Snake Eye, Dia Bellstar, like that was the biggest offender of that, right? Um, then you have more decks that are doing that now with Yummy, Mitsurugi, blah 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 blah, or Fiendsmith, something like there's a bunch of cards and decks that are put together, or engines are thrown into decks because of their lack of restriction, which is kind of the problem, but not what I really wanted to get into. And then the next video that I watched before that video, but it reminds me is that if you go into any like Yu-Gi-Oh search engine, and he was building a runic um paleo he was building a runic paleo labyrinth deck, right? He typed in Monster Gate, and everybody was like, what is all of that? And he was explaining to people that there's so many cards that say negate on it that this is why either it's saying like the monster's negated or negate something. Like this is why there's so many cards that pop up when you type in monster gate, because monster negate is also in all of these cards. And it had me thinking that is the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is the topic of today. Again, if you haven't seen the title of the video, that's just the type. Like that is the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh! As we move forward into playing. For example, Dark Destiny Hero Dark Angel. This just negates any spell that your opponent plays as long as it's fate, like because you special summon it to their side of the field. And when a spell card or effect you activate resolves negate that effect. Now, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For a really long time, and the very first negate card was Solemn Judgment. And Solemn Judgment was so like frowned upon because back then Solemn Judgment asked you to pay half your life points to do so. And nobody wanted to do that. Nobody wanted to pay half their life points to negate a summon or a spell trap card. Screw that. I'm not paying half my life points because it was a resource at the time. It was a very coveted resource. Nobody wanted to lose their, they didn't want to lose their card or their life points and then put them in range of, let's say, like a blue eyes, and then they just get destroyed. But then people started catching on, like, wait a minute, Solemn Judgment is actually pretty goated. The next negate that was put on a monster that I can remember was the one and only Stardust Dragon. Stardust Dragon was the first, I believe, monster to ever come out to have an omni negate, or yeah, to have a negate. But it wasn't an omni negate. It specifically said if a card were to be destroyed, and it's a win effect, so you have to use it immediately. So when a card or effect is activated that would destroy a card, tribute this and negate it, right? Then the card after that that had a negate was, I believe, Majestic Star Dragon. But the reason this card works is because you need Majestic Dragon, Stardust Dragon, and one non-tuner monster. This was a very hard card to summon, so people just played Stardust Dragon. Then 5Ds pushed it even further with, what was it, Delta Axel Synchro, where you had to have Formula Synchron, Stardust Dragon to go into, or it was Axel Synchro. So you needed a Synchro tuner, and then you had Shooting Star Dragon. And this one has the same effect as Stardust, but also can negate an attack. But you see the balance between cards having negates and what we have today. For example, all of the Dominus cards I believe are very fair because not every deck can play them. And if you do play them, your deck has to be very restricted to whatever the Dominus cards say you are allowed to play. For example, Blue Eyes can play Dominus Purge because it locks you into light, wind, and earth. Excuse me. And then you have Dominus Impulse. Malice can play Dominus Impulse because Malice is just purely dark, but their extra deck wasn't entirely dark. But because Malice was such a strong deck, they could just get away with playing their three in deck Link monsters. So they could Impulse and Ash and Perulia because Impulse locks you into dark, fire, and water. So I say that to say that that is like 50% of the problem, and I'll get into the other 50% of Yu-Gi-Oh. The first 50% that I'm talking about is Omni negates with low cost, where you have Majestic Star Dragon, and then like if we fast forward into the future for the sake of, right? We fast forward into the future. I believe 5Ds was done at this point, but they were still releasing like 5Ds, like Synchro Monsters. You have Shooting Quasar Dragon. This was the first, I believe, again, I could be misquoting here. This was the first Omni Negate on a monster body. Now, do you see the difference between this and Baron de Fleur? This one is vastly harder to summon, and it has a floating effect. Baron de Fleur was easy to summon, and it gave you a pop. Like it didn't float, but you could pop something on the board. So you have Baron de Fleur, which gave you an Omni Negate, and then once per turn you could just destroy something. And then I guess it also has a floating effect. But you see how generic it is? One tuner plus one or more non-tuner monsters is very generic. And that is what the problem the 50% is omni negates with low cost. Because all the cards that I've shown you prior to this are cards that negate something specific and it comes at a high cost. For example, Stardust Dragon, if your opponent were to Raigeki you, of course you're going to Stardust Dragon, because if your Stardust Dragon dies, because it's going to come back, but Stardust Dragon can stop it and protect your board, and if your opponent has follow up, they have follow up, that's fine. But your opponent could still banish it. They can still target it with something, so they can still bounce it. They can flip it face down. There's still so much interactions that you can do when you just have the one card that stops destruction. Now, the problem with today's meta is that people set up these enormous boards that are all Baron de Flor essentially. You have like three, four negates on the board, and your opponent is stuck with 4 or 5 cards in hand. And that's just like, if you could do the math, that doesn't seem fair to me that your opponent is going to omni negate 3 to 4 cards in your 5 cards to 6 card starting hand, and then you're just stuck with two two cards, about 2 cards left in your hand that you can work with. And because Konami had did such a bad job with the negating problem, then you start to see engines like Snake Eye, where they're all 1 card starters. They all get you into something, but then that became a problem because those would get you into cards like this. So it didn't matter how often your opponent negated you or what they negated. You could just bait them into ashing something, and bam, I'm still gonna get into Barone. I'm still gonna You stopped my entire Snake Eye line, but I still have Fiendsmith in my hand. Now, I love watching combos go off. Like, I love watching people combo and do this and do that and summon this and put this face down and do this. It's amazing. But it becomes too much going first when you set up multiple negates on board. And that is half the problem with Yu-Gi-Oh right now, is that there's too many negates. Now, I agree with negates that cost you something. Exactly, like the grandfather of all the Omni negates, Solemn Judgment, that cost you something. Ash Blossom cost you a card in your hand and a slot in your deck. So you could stop something, but then what? Your opponent can still play because of how engines are created now. You ashed one thing, they can still keep going. Now, granted, they might make a weaker board, but they can still go. The same with Effect Veiler. This is a very weak monster that really means nothing in the grand scheme of a deck, but it can stop a monster negate. It can stop a monster effect. Ghost Bell, like all of the Ghost Sisters, I believe are completely fair cards because they all negate something very specific, except Spooky Dog. These two negate something specific. Ghost Ogre pop stuff. The wind one also negates. The wind one is an effect veiler, but only for special summon monsters. You see what I mean? Like, I love specific negates that cost you something. That's what makes the game fair. But when you have an omni negate that costs you nothing, because at the end of the day, you negated something, and if that was the only thing your opponent could do, you still have a 3K beater, and it's a once per turn. Oh, did they errata this? Is that why it's at 3? Because it says once while face up on the field. I think Baron de Flor was errata. I just noticed this. But okay, pre-errata Baron de Flor. I didn't notice that it was errata just now. Because it says once while face up. So you get an Omni negate once while it's face up. So they errata this, which is why it's at 3 in Master Duel. Okay. Well, anyway, pre-errata Baron, whatever. Now, the other half of the problem is floodgates. So 50% is omni negates with low cost, with low to no cost, and then the other half of the problem is omni negates. Like, why are the light and dark barrier statue still legal? Because if I wanted to, I could just play that in Malice and go crazy. They're all banned in Master Duel, apparently. Because I put barrier statue and it does not show anything. So yeah, all of the barrier statues are banned in Master Duel at least. That makes sense, right? But get rid of Tikaboo. Get rid of um Rivalry of Warlords. Get rid of all of these crazy omni negates that only benefit the user. I mean, obviously you want it to benefit the user. It was designed to affect both players, but the way that the game is, like if I were to just do pure blue eyes, like I can get away with playing the light statue in this deck. If I could be completely honest, I can get away in blue eyes by just playing the light barrier statue. I definitely could. I could get away with playing the light barrier statue in blue eyes because you're not summoning anything else, and you're summoning Nibiru, which is still possible under statue, but you don't want to. You know what I mean? Like everything else in here is just a hand trap. Sometimes Effect Veiler is summoned off of just being a link material for the Link one, but I can play the Light Barrier statue and get away with it. So why do these floodgates still exist? Ito, the supreme magical being, he still exists. Like if people wanted to go back to that floodgatey variation of branded, they could. They very well could. So Konami and players of Yu-Gi-Oh, if you agree, click the like button. If you don't, then leave a comment. Please don't dislike. I'm just ranting here. I don't because I really feel like if they got rid of the omni negates with low cost, then we would be good. Like I even agree with infinite impermanence because it targets one and negates a monster. It targets one monster and negates it. But there's monsters that can't be targeted or are unaffected by trap cards. Now, when it comes to spell trap negates, like that's fine. You can have as many spell trap negates as you want. But when it comes to monster negates, because spell cards are kind of free, right? Spell cards are way too free. Like if I drew this on my opponent, then I essentially win. Like Illusion Gate is like an auto win card for most decks. Now, granted, Omni negate, whatever. And I will say like 0.001% rounded up of the problem are cards that say you can't interact with this. Even though they're not the strongest, they do create a weird vacuum of, oh, well, now I can't do anything. Like Super Poly or Ultimate Slayer. Like cards that are just like your opponent can't respond to this card at all. And Forbidden Droplet is one of those cards, but it works because you get rid of because you have to send cards and then your opponent can respond to it based off of what you sent or not. Because if you sent like a spell, they could still respond with a monster or a trap. Or if you sent a trap, they could still respond with a spell or a monster, even though there's probably not a spell out there that would stop Forbidden Droplet. Or at least you could respond to it with a spell, like Fallen the Virtuous or whatever. So low range, mid range, high range decks, I feel like there would be some unity if there weren't Omni Negates. Like, imagine your best deck flooding the whole board, but there's no negates. And then your opponent can also flood the entire board because you can't negate anything. You can destroy stuff with Ghost Ogre. You can you could do this. You can hit them with the Imperm or the Veiler or any of the hand traps if you open with them, but they're still able to play like five other cards in their hand. And I mean every floodgate, like Necro Valley, this card. I actually like this card. This card is actually very valid when it comes to combo decks because a lot of decks are combo decks nowadays. If you just ash one thing, your opponent has something else they could do. So Droll just says no. Droll, and it's a monster, and it has to be sent to the graveyard. So if you have like Dimensional Fissure up, you can't Droll. And Droll affects both players. Neither player can add when this card is active. So if you like fool lost your opponent, but they keep adding, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna Droll you because this is kind of dangerous, then you can't draw no more. So this is a fair card. Like this legitimately affects both players. This isn't like Tikaboo, a rivalry of warlords. This is like, okay, both players need to add. So again, like whoever watched this, thank you for watching. This was just like a short little rant video, even though it's like 20 minutes. um, but hopefully you guys understand where I'm coming from. Pretty much too long didn't watch if you made it this far, and it was just like noise in the background. I would say Konami's big problem in Yu-Gi-Oh is making Omni negates with low to no cost and just floodgates with the same caveat. They just apply with low to no cost. Um, so thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you guys understand what I mean and you agree with what I have to say. But peace.